What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Pure EVil MMA. I'm your host, as always, and it's a big night. But what makes tonight even bigger is a special guest we got on the line right now. I am so happy to announce his name here on Pure EVil MMA. We got the legendary Houston Alexander. What's going on, Houston? How you doing tonight?
Man. What's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm so happy that you're calling in tonight, and we got a lot to talk about. But first things first, there's a big pay-per-view card tonight, and there's a lot of people that are counting Anthony Smith out. And if there's anybody out there that can tell these fans never to count somebody out, it's you, especially what you're able to do against Keith Jardine. So with that being said, how do you see that main event going?
Well, see, here's the thing. I trained with Anthony. Anthony trained, and I don't think a lot of people realize who he was training under in the state of Nebraska here in Omaha. You had Ryan Jensen, you had Ryan Roberts, you had Jason Brills, Joe Ellenberger, Jake Ellenberger, myself. You had a lot of UFC guys, man, in one gym. So why would you count someone out who was going up against people with all this experience in one gym? And this is over the past 10 years. So with that being said, he had more experience. He's probably got more experience now, especially with all the fights he's had and the people he's been up with. So, man, you can't count Anthony out because he's a fighter, and people from this area, man, we just don't give up. So, with that being said, man, you can't count someone from Nebraska out, especially when our courage is high in all aspects of MMA.
And you know what? One thing about Anthony Smith, like you were just saying, he's been doing it for so long. Like even back in the Strikeforce days, I remember interviewing him about maybe 3-4 years ago. And it's just so crazy. Like at the time I interviewed him, I was so happy because, I was watching him for a long time. And there are people that, still don't know who this guy is and what he's capable of, even after the guys that he's been able to, get a win over. So tonight's a big night for him.
Anthony's had over 60-something fights total.
Yeah, he's.
Now, when I tell people I have over 200 fights, they can't believe it. Because we were fighting, man. We were fighting on all the small circuits, and we were doing all the small shows. So a lot of people, but of course they didn't have social media back then, so people wouldn't know that we had all these fights. So he has the experience, man, and he has the knowledge of the game. So you can't, with all that knowledge, man, how are you gonna defeat somebody with all that knowledge?
It's gonna be a good one, man. It's definitely a huge card. It's absolutely stacked, and you've been doing it for. I mean, you were on one of the very first UFC cards that was televised, and here we are today with it on ESPN. What does that mean to you?
That's a crazy thing, man. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely crazy, man, because UFC 71 to me does not seem that long ago when you made the your debut.
Now we're 235. Now we're 235, man. So that's crazy. So that just shows you how much fighting has been going on. Even when they were VHS tapes and they were showing the UFC back then. Now, man, let me let you know something else. I think in UFC 2, Steve Jenham, another Nebraska guy, won the championship from Nebraska. And I don't know why people are counting people out from Nebraska, but they sure better watch out tonight, man. And that's not taking anything away from Bones Jones because he's a great fighter. But I just get tired of hearing that Anthony doesn't have a chance in this fight.
And one thing that I can relate here with you, and I wanted to get into later on in this interview, but since you're on the subject, you're talking about your area. You like to represent the area that you're from, and not only with mixed martial arts, but you feel the same way about the rap scene, the rap culture in that area is being undermined as well. So why don't you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've been in hip hop all my life. So I've been as a b-boy, as a graph writer. And again, repping the culture itself, but not just in Nebraska, the culture as a whole. I've always just been a part of it. So just MMA has just been one of those things that just came naturally because I was a b-boy. So and I boxed and I wrestled already. So it was just a natural progression for me to go from the culture of hip hop to MMA, especially being into boxing and wrestling already, man. So, but yeah, you gotta rep where you're from, man, so everybody knows where you're from.
And one thing about the rap scene right now, and I want to get your take on it, it really seems like it's turning into, at least for the mainstream rap, it seems like it's turning into a lot of drug culture. Like my little sister generation, like the rappers that they're listening to right now, like SoundCloud, it's really promoting a lot of negativity. And, it's been around
you
for...
gotta understand something. The music hasn't changed. The message, every once in a while, the message will change. But it's always been the same type of street music. Maybe kids are using or expressing using drugs more, but that's always been in rap. So you just can't say it's this generation's music. It's always been in rap, but I think they're just saying it more, and you're hearing it more because of social media. That's all.
That's true. That's definitely true. And one thing that you're so lucky for, man, is what you're doing right now, showing kids that may want to follow down a path where they're being misguided by, their schoolmates or a bad life at home. You've actually started foundations and go from school to school, showing kids and educating kids on the rap culture, dancing, art, and showing them. Because like for me, man, it was really hard to focus in school. I was a musician. I also played football and stuff, and that's all I cared about was football and music. It was really hard for me to focus and concentrate. So it's cool to see you going to these schools. What was your inspiration to do something like that?
Well, I started doing I started doing radio about the same time I started doing MMA, and one of the things they wanted to focus on was the community. And one of the ideas I came up with was, hey, why don't we just go into these schools and teach these kids about hip hop culture? Because they get so much negative imagery on television and on radio, they know nothing about the culture. The people are getting further and further away from the culture, and they just think that the culture itself is just about rap music. And it's not about just rap music. It's about music, and it's about dance. It's about the art. And that's my job, and that's the job of my organization, is to go in and teach these kids about a culture they're growing up in. It's the next generation's culture. So as the generations go on and on, and they have to know more and more about the culture that we've started. So it's got to be passed on, just like anything else.
And you've been doing this since the 1980s. You were actually pretty big in graffiti as well. Like you kind of blended everything together to really push a movement. So it's kind of cool. Like you're one of the lucky guys that was able to have a life after mixed martial arts. And
well, that's because I had a life before it, man. So there's no life after it. I already had a life before it. So MMA just played it played a heavy part of daily activity in my life. But I had a life already before it. So I was already doing radio. I was already doing community foundation type stuff already. And again, fighting just disciplined me in a lot of aspects. But I already had a life before that.
You actually was you were going to college for art and music, and you ended up leaving college to be with your daughter, right? And you actually gave your kidney to her.
Well, no, I was supposed to go to Savannah School of Art and Design in Savannah, Georgia. But again, my daughter came along, and I chose not to go, and I chose to stay behind and take care of my daughter full time. So that was the easiest decision to make. And I don't regret it to this day.
So obviously, man, one thing we're talking about here is the children and how big that is to you to motivate them. One thing I think is absolutely genius idea that you're doing is you're giving away concert tickets to children who are doing good in school. Is that correct? Is that what I said?
Yeah, man. With the foundation, with the Houston Alexander Foundation, and with Rotella Bakery, which is a big company here in Omaha, and statewide, and United States wise, we're starting to give kids who do great in school concert tickets. We get them bikes. We even with the school tour, we buy the kids bikes. And we're starting to do little small things that help the kids. With me, I like to just do it, just like the Nike logo, man. Because when I heard the Nike logo, I was like, okay, just do it. I thought it was the stupidest thing ever until you think about it. Anything you need or need to do, you just do it. And so with the kids want to see immediate results. They don't want to see you sitting around waiting on legislation or waiting on things to happen. They want things done now. So that's one part of my organization where we're going and we try to do for these kids now for their work in the classroom and outside the classroom. Something
else I really am interested about. You were on Key and Peele. Is that true?
Yeah, that was actually pretty cool because those guys, that was one of my favorite shows on Comedy Central.
How did you link up with that? How did that happen?
Well, Peele hit me up on Twitter, and he asked me if I would come out and actually do one of the shows, and I was like, whoa! I was a big fan already, and for him to pick me out of all those people. That was pretty cool, man, because I believe Terry Crews was up for the part, but he couldn't do it because he had other obligations. And he picked me out, man. He flew me out, and we did the show, and I was on their last show before they got off Comedy Central, so that was actually cool, too.
Wow. What did you do for that role? What did they have you do?
I mean, you just, we were in the bar, he bumps into me, and then it starts from there, man. It's funny that they even picked me out for the role because here in Omaha, I do a sketch comedy show called Omaha Live, and if you go on Omaha Live on YouTube, you can see all the things that we've done, and I've been doing sketch comedy, man, for the past 2 or 3 years. So it was just cool to even be in that situation.
It's so cool to know that you're still doing it with being creative. I love that. People out there are, a little bit here, a little bit there. It's like there's constant reasons to wake up excited.
Keep busy, but you have to keep busy, just like you're keeping busy with your podcast, man. And so, congratulations on that too, because that's big that you're interviewing all these people, man, to get back to the people yourself.
Yeah, man, I love it. I wake up feeling so inspired every day, and I think that's what's really important to a lot of people out there. And even like tonight. Like, this is what life's all about. We're going to be hanging off the edge of our seat, rooting for this guy or the other guy. That's what life's all about, is feeling that energy.
I've seen a lot of cards over the years, and this card is probably one of the most stacked cards I've seen in a long time. With Lawler and, there's Jones and Anthony, and it's just a stacked card, man. So, the UFC has been getting better with putting their cards together. I was kind of worried there for a minute, but they're finally getting it together now.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of excitement. So moving forward on this interview, we have a couple of fan questions that reached out. Man. We got a couple of fan questions for you. This one is from Scott Kenyon, and he wants to know, who is your current favorite UFC fighter?
Who is my current favorite UFC fighter? Well, the current favorite UFC fighter, that would be me. that would be me, but I'm not currently in the UFC, so I discount myself. But who would be my favorite UFC fighter right now? I've been a big fan of Woodley. I like how he's very deceptive. A lot of people think that a lot of his fights are boring, and until he actually shows you he knows how to box, or he actually shows you that he knows how to wrestle, or again, we haven't seen really a lot of his jiu-jitsu, but he's actually from my area, hometown. He's from St. Louis.
Yep, that's right.
So you got to support that. I'm from across the bridge. I'm from East St. Louis, but he's from St. Louis, so I got he's probably right now one of the favorite guys to watch.
And obviously, while you're talking about that, we have another fan question for you. But below that, Ben Askren is finally making his UFC debut.
Okay.
He's going to be fighting Robbie Lawler. Who do you got in that fight? How do you see that fight going, at least?
Man, and to me, I'm very interested in that fight because Lawler, he's still a monster, and this guy he's fought all over the world, but I don't believe he hasn't fought in the UFC yet. and the UFC is supposed to have the best fighters in the world. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does with Lawler, because that's a tough fight off the bat. And I've really not seen this other guy so much, and I really haven't followed him on any type of YouTube or any type of MMA pages. But is he that good? I don't know. Has he been in competition that's pushed him? We'll see tonight.
And for the people out there that don't really understand what it feels like to be on a big card like this, that everyone's paying attention to, how does that feel? How could you relate to fans, like kind of give them a taste and paint a picture of what's going through a fighter's mind on a night like tonight?
Okay, well, if I just, the way you can express it would be like this. It's like waiting on getting that lottery ticket. And the way I express it is getting that lottery ticket, and they're calling your numbers on television, and you're getting maybe 3 or 4 out of the 5, but you're still happy you got them. So because they're very rare, and this is just one of those. This is just one of those situations, man, where it's really rare to have this stack of card, and for everyone to see this on this particular night with all these different storylines and all these different fights tonight, man. So it's going to be one of those nights where you're going to be glued to the TV, and if you blink, it's probably you're probably going to miss it. If you go to the bathroom, you're probably going to miss it. And if you play it off to where you don't know what's going to happen, it might pass you up because you'll play it off to where you're not going to understand it. So you just got to stay glued to the TV. It's just one of those situations, man.
Well, like
if that makes sense to you.
It makes 100%. It makes a lot of sense to me. And like for Ben Askren, like you were saying, he's making his UFC debut. When Bruce Buffer's sitting there, like when you made your debut, it was one of the best. It is, in a lot of people's book, the best debut and one of the biggest upsets in UFC history when you knocked out Keith in just 49 seconds. When Bruce Buffer's sitting there saying your name, right when you guys step foot in, does that all go away? Does all the panic and fear go away?
Man, and when I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't hear any of that. When I won, all I heard was there was a section in the crowd that night, and this is a true story. They were from Kearney, Nebraska, and all I heard was that crowd of people chanting Nebraska. I didn't hear Bruce Buffer's announcement. I didn't, if you watch it, I wasn't even paying attention to the referee, man. I was just listening to that chant, and that's why, that's why when I spoke the Nebraska's in the building thing, that's what I heard in the background when I said it, because I heard these people from Kearney, Nebraska, at UFC 71 saying Nebraska.
Absolutely crazy, man.
It was crazy. That's all I heard that night.
It's something out of a movie. You have such an inspiring story, a different story as well, and you've been in some pretty big fights with a lot of big names. We got one more question from one of our listeners here. Let me pull it up.
No problem, man. I hope I'm not boring your audience.
Oh, no, not at all.
With these long, drawn-out answers.
No. Legendary to have you on. It really is. This is from Nixon Speaks. As an OG of the sport, what would you go back and tell a debuting Houston Alexander if you had to pick 3 things? What would you tell yourself?
In my debut fight?
Yeah.
You know what? It's funny. I wouldn't tell myself anything. I would do the exact same thing I did, because we were already prepared, because we've had so many fights before that, just like Anthony Smith. Anthony Smith has over 60-some fights, so he's not going to be bothered by any type of crowd or pressure. And when I in my debut, and again, they didn't have YouTube at the time, so they didn't see all the other fights before that. I was already cool. I was already calm, and I was already collected. And guess what? I already knew how to fight, so I wasn't worried about anything. So I would go back and tell myself nothing.
Now, do you actually have like one fight you wish you can go back and get a rematch with somebody with?
Oh man, of course. You want to go back to the Kimbo fight. Um, and to this day, I think we still won that fight point wise, because I believe everyone was expecting for us to go in there and just not have any type of strategy and just start brawling each other. But it's funny to watch that fight over again, because I was actually moving around kicking this guy, and I probably kicked him over 40 times.
Yeah, in the first round, he didn't throw a single punch, I don't think.
In the first round, he didn't throw one punch, so yeah. I'm still trying to understand how this. Well, we know why he won, because of popularity. But if they were more educated back then, like they are now, they would have counted those leg kicks as strikes, and they would have showed the movement that we was actually doing was actually boxing. You don't stay in front of a guy when you're trying to punch or have this guy attack. You don't stay in front of a guy. So we were kind of ahead of our time with a lot of the stuff that we were doing, because if you look now, I watched Conor McGregor run from his opponent just to get center back in the ring.
Resetting.
If you ran from your opponent back then, they booed you. Now I see a lot of the fighters literally running, giving the other fighter their back from running, and I was like, whoa. So if you want to watch people run and they're on the pedals nowadays, that's fine. But we going to the side, shuffling to the side is not running. It's strategy. And I wish I could take that back, because if you look, I believe it was the second round of the Kimbo fight. He got a good takedown, but the second time he tried to take me down, he slipped up and I ended up on top. Now, if we would have had at least 15 more seconds left, that fight would have ended right there. Because when he slipped up and I was on top, he was totally exhausted.
Now, like you said, it had a lot to do with popularity. With the judging, we still see this issue. Like when fighters go down to Brazil, I just had Max Griffin on, who had to fight Thiago down there, and he won 2 of the 3 rounds clearly, and yet he lost the fight, and it's so frustrating. We still see that today. So I got to ask you: do you think judges should be outside of the arena where they're not influenced and maybe have a better view? How could they change this?
Well, you know what? It's funny because you can't. I don't think you can change the popularity matchup, because you can still have a judge who might find the guy more popular than the other. So it's not just the crowd or where you're at. It could be the judge. So he could be a fan. Who knows? That person could be a fan of a certain fighter as well, even though he or she is supposed to be biased, right?
Yep, 100%.
So that's human. This is just human error, brother. If you like a certain person, you like a certain person.
Now, here's my last question to you. Obviously,
no problem.
This was one of your biggest fights that people remember. I remember sitting there in the living room with all my boys watching that Kimbo slice, because that season was so huge. Season 10 of The Ultimate Fighter. I even do a show with James McSweeney, who's on that season with, Brandon Shaw, Roy Nelson, all those guys. I mean, it was one of the most viewed shows in history. Now, one thing that we learned about Kimbo is he was actually a really nice guy. Did you witness that yourself? Did you get to, talk to him maybe after the fight?
Well, the funny thing about it, and this is that, and God rest that man's soul, because of his passing. The one thing that people don't know about that fight after it was finished, I was walking around the hotel afterwards, and Kimbo was in a wheelchair. Because I kicked him so many times, he couldn't walk.
Yeah, we saw that in the 3rd round. He was having a really hard time, and it started in the first.
He couldn't walk. And then they rolled him around a little while, from what I understand, and he couldn't walk. So that I didn't witness it, but I just heard it. And before the fight, I'll tell you a story that I've never told before the fight. Now, I don't run around with an entourage, and I've never did. Anytime I do, I had a fight or any upcoming fight, all I had was coaches. So that's 2 or 3 guys. At the time, Kimbo had maybe 30 people around him at the time, and I just remember wanting to go up to him and introduce myself to this man. And I think when I did, he had about 40 people, man, trying to stop me from coming up to him to shake his hand. But when he saw that it was me, he let his people have me come through, and I shook my hand and introduced myself, and that was the end of it. So,
wow.
Usually it's a lot of the tough guys, man, that are really tough are nice guys. I'm not a bad guy myself.
Man, I would have.
But I will whoop your ass though.
Were you guys ever in talk about doing a rematch, maybe for Bellator?
Man, there was always talk, but talk is cheap until they put the money up.
Yeah. There was also that fight that you wanted the rematch that was set up, and the guy got popped. I think you actually got injured getting ready for it. It was the fight where originally the Superman punch occurred. You guys were supposed to do the rematch after that.
Okay, well, I don't know anything about a rematch, but I know, the guy got a good. It was a good shot, but I was still, coherent. Just like I believe in the last UFC pay-per-view with the lightweights, the light heavyweights. Not light heavyweights. The lighter guys was it Bradshaw that got hit?
Brendan Schaub, Roy Nelson. You're talking about?
I don't believe so. It was the lighter weighted guys. There was the smaller guys. I believe he got
TJ Dillashaw versus Cejudo.
Was that
TJ Dillashaw?
Yes.
Yeah.
He got hit a couple times, and they called the fight. And that was 30 seconds into the fight. So they didn't even give the guy the time to recover. So sometimes, man, it's again more so human error. You got to give the guy a time to recover, man. Give him a few seconds to recover. And I believe we got clipped a little bit, but we wasn't out of it. So. But I never heard anything about the rematch, brother. So.
Oh, I thought you guys were trying to set up that rematch, and
I'm sure they tried to, but again, if the money's not put up, man, then nothing's happening.
Yeah, 100%. So
yeah, man.
This is what I like to do at this part in the interview. Obviously, you're a DJ still right now on 106.9 KOPW, and you actually DJ for parties, weddings, and stuff like that. Where can people hire you? How do they get a hold of you?
Hey, man, people can get a hold of me, man, through my foundation. They can go to HoustonAlexander.org, and we have message board there. It's under Houston Alexander, the Houston Alexander Foundation. Again, you can go to HoustonAlexander.org, and they'll take you straight to the website. I've been doing a lot of speeches for organ donation because I gave my daughter a kidney in the early 2000s. I've been dealing with a lot of at-risk youth, along with teaching the kids about hip-hop culture and doing small things for the community, man. Like I said, with the ticket giveaway, bike giveaways, just so these kids can see something right away, man, with what they're doing in school or what they're doing outside of school. That's doing when they're doing pretty well. So again, go to the website. HoustonAlexander.org, and it's on the Houston Alexander Foundation.
And were you just at the Boy Scouts? You sent me a picture right before this interview.
Yeah, man. I said So I was a guest judge at one of the Boy Scouts area. I think 305, or it's a Scout 305. And man, we just had a good time with all those guys. So it's just always constantly doing something in the community, man. Just giving back. That's all.
Last but not least, if you have any sponsors, shout-outs, anything at all, the floor is now all yours, champ.
Well, big shout-out. The only shout-outs I have, man, is to my coaches, Coach Curly Alexander, Coach Bodler, and one of our main sponsors, Rotello's Bakery, man. That they've been there from day one, and all the people on my staff with the Houston Alexander Foundation, they've all been great, man. So. And shouts out to you, man, for wanting to do this interview. So I appreciate it. I don't do a lot of interviews, but when I'm asked to do it, you know, I try to accommodate people.
It means a lot. It means a lot more than you know. I've been trying to get you on the show for a while, so definitely knocking this one off of my bucket list. I would love to have you back on again. This is the last thing. Can you just say, hey guys, this is Houston Alexander, and you're listening to Pure EVil MMA?
Okay. Yo, this is Houston Alexander, and you're listening to Pure EVil MMA.
Thank you, Houston. Enjoy the rest of your night, and thank you so much for joining us here on Pure EVil MMA.
No problem, man. Hey, tag me so I can go ahead and repost it for you, brother.
All right, I got you. I'll talk to you soon.
Hey, talk to me after the pay-per-view, man.
All right, that sounds good. Sounds like a plan.
All right, cool.
All right, later, man.
All right, peace.
You guys go. How about that? How about that? Legendary interview, man. I'll never forget. I've watched so many of this guy's fights with my boys. And to be able to sit here today, especially UFC 235, and talk to Houston Alexander and hear his story and know that he's still doing well. There's a lot of these fighters out there that they get in the game and they don't know what to do afterwards. They're so confused. That's why people like this, fighters like this, it's so inspiring to see that. And like you said, he was doing it before mixed martial arts. He had all this stuff going on, and he's still continuing it now till this day. And I think that's really special. Somebody who's doing music, dancing, art, and mixed martial arts, like, it really is just all art at the end of the day. So, very creative person. I would love for him to write a book. One thing I wanted to touch on with him was how he donated his kidney in, I think it was 2000, to his daughter. And, he was huge in the mixed martial arts world. Fought for UFC, Bellator, KSW. I mean, it's amazing to hear from him. And hear the stories that he was sharing. The Kimbo Slice thing, man. That's one of the most talked about fights with Houston Alexander, and I'm sure he wants that fight back. I actually thought he was going to win that fight, and you guys can go back and watch it, obviously, and score it yourself, and tell us what you think about it. One of the most talked about fights, and it went down at the end of Ultimate Fighter Season 10 finale. So thank you guys so much for hooking us up with this interview. It was because of you that we got Houston on the show. So thank you so much, especially to Scott Kenyon, who reached out to Houston and nailed this interview. I want to thank you guys so much. We got a lot to digest tonight with UFC 235, and I'm going to be trying to do a fight companion for everybody. Make sure to subscribe down below. If you're listening on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you are, subscribe down below. Give us the thumbs up. Check out PureEvilMMA.com to stay up on all the latest podcasts and MMA news. And we also got updates for tonight's fights. I'm Evil Eddie from Pure Evil MMA, PureEvilMMA.com. White knuckles till the end. And remember, without evil, there's no purity. Behave yourselves.